The steel door slams shut. The sound echoes down the concrete block of the California Substance Abuse Treatment Facility and State Prison in Corcoran. Inside a tiny cell sits a man wearing an oversized, faded blue jumpsuit. Across his chest is printed a number, P50522. He is earning 8 cents an hour scrubbing baked-on grease off pizza pans in the prison kitchen. He is surrounded by violent offenders, gang members, and armed guards. In the yard, he has to keep his head down to avoid getting beaten up. If you looked at Inmate P50522, you would see a broken man. A lost cause. A statistical tragedy. What you wouldn't realize is that just a few years earlier, this man was nominated for an Academy Award. This is Robert Downey Jr. Behind every famous name is a story you've never heard. We all know the billionaire playboy, the savior of the cinematic universe, the man who proudly stated, "I am Iron Man." But before the armor, there was a man who burned his entire life to the ground. The rejections. The rock-bottom moments. The grind that nobody saw. This is the story of Hollywood's greatest liability. To understand the fall of Robert Downey Jr., you have to understand that he didn't just stumble into addiction. He was led there. He was raised in an underground, bohemian Hollywood environment by his father, a counterculture filmmaker. At the age of 6, when most kids are learning to ride a bike, Robert's father handed him a marijuana joint. It was a misguided attempt at bonding, but it lit a fuse that would eventually detonate Robert's entire life. By his 20s, drugs were his coping mechanism, his creative fuel, and his absolute master. Despite the addiction, his talent was undeniable. He was a supernova. He could outact anyone in the room, earning critical acclaim and a Best Actor nomination for playing Charlie Chaplin in 1992. But Hollywood is a machine that demands consistency, and the drugs were tearing Robert apart. The descent wasn't a sudden drop, it was a grueling, public humiliation. In 1996, he was pulled over on Sunset Boulevard naked, hallucinating, and in possession of heroin, cocaine, and a .357 Magnum revolver. A month later, while on parole, he wandered into his neighbor's house under the influence, walked into their 11-year-old child's bedroom, and passed out in the bed. The industry watched in horror as one of their brightest stars became a punchline for late-night talk shows. Directors stopped calling. Friends stopped answering. The arrests piled up. The court-ordered rehabs failed, one after another. The judge finally had enough. In 1999, Robert stood in a courtroom, looked at the judge, and delivered a quote that captured the pure, terrifying grip of his addiction. "It's like I have a loaded gun in my mouth, and my fingers on the trigger. And I like the taste of the gunmetal." The judge sentenced him to 3 years in state prison. This is the rock bottom. Corcoran State Prison is not a celebrity rehab facility. It is a maximum security compound that, at the time, housed Charles Manson. Robert was placed in a general population intake center. He was stripped of his clothes, his dignity, and his name. He was just P50522. The reality of prison broke him. He was assaulted. He woke up in pools of his own blood. He spent his days scrubbing dishes for pennies, staring at the concrete walls, realizing that he had entirely thrown his life away. He was uninsurable. He was untouchable. His career was definitively over. But rock bottom has a strange way of providing clarity. When you have lost everything, you have nothing left to hide behind. In that prison, scrubbing those pans, Robert made a quiet, agonizing decision. He decided he was done tasting the gunmetal. He served a year in Corcoran before being unexpectedly released on bail. But the real grind was just beginning. Getting out of prison was easy. Getting Hollywood to forgive him was almost impossible. When Robert tried to return to acting, he hit a massive, impenetrable wall. In Hollywood, actors require completion bonds, essentially insurance policies that guarantee a studio the actor will actually finish the movie. Because of Robert's history of arrests and drug abuse, the insurance companies universally blacklisted him. He was legally uninsurable. No major studio could hire him, even if they wanted to. He was a radioactive liability. He was forced to take tiny, independent roles just to stay busy. For years, he submitted to random drug tests every single day. He practiced Wing Chun Kung Fu to discipline his mind. He worked with quiet, desperate humility to rebuild trust, one day at a time. His first lifeline came from an unlikely source, Mel Gibson. Gibson, dealing with his own controversies, personally paid Robert's insurance bond out of his own pocket so Robert could star in a small film called The Singing Detective. It was a massive financial risk for Gibson, but it proved to the industry that Robert could show up on time, hit his marks, and stay sober. But the real test, the moment that would define his legacy, came in 2006. Marvel Studios was a struggling independent company trying to launch a massive, risky project, Iron Man. Director Jon Favreau knew that the character of Tony Stark, a brilliant, arrogant billionaire fighting his own demons and trying to rebuild his life, was practically a mirror image of Robert Downey Jr. Favreau pushed for Robert. He fought for him. But Marvel's executives were terrified. They looked at Robert's record. The arrests. The prison time. The uninsurability. They explicitly told Favreau on the record, under no circumstances are we prepared to hire him for any price. It was a total, absolute rejection. Most actors would have walked away. But Robert didn't just want the role, he needed it. He needed to prove that Inmate P50522 is dead. So, he did something established actors almost never do. He agreed to a screen test. He essentially agreed to audition, for free, to prove he wasn't a liability. For 3 weeks, he prepared with a manic, obsessive focus. He treated that screen test like it was a matter of life and death. Because, for his career, it was. He walked into the audition room wearing a tuxedo. He was sharp, focused, and electrifying. He delivered the lines with a perfect blend of arrogant charm and deep, underlying pain. He wasn't acting. He was channeling a decade of humiliation, prison time, and grinding sobriety into a fictional character. When the executives watched the tape, the room went silent. They couldn't deny it. Robert Downey Jr. was Tony Stark. Against all logic, against all insurance advice, Marvel rolled the dice. They hired the biggest liability in Hollywood to anchor their entire franchise. Iron Man released in 2008 and became a cultural phenomenon. It didn't just succeed, it fundamentally changed the landscape of modern cinema. Robert Downey Jr. became the highest-paid actor in the world, the beating heart of a multi-billion-dollar cinematic universe, and eventually, an Academy Award winner. But his legacy isn't the red carpets, or the billions of dollars, or the superhero armor. His legacy is the grueling, humiliating crawl out of Corcoran State Prison. It's the 8 cents an hour scrubbing pizza pans. It's the daily drug tests, the closed doors, and the refusal to let his worst mistakes define his final act. It's the grind that nobody saw. For more inspiring zero-to-hero stories, hit the subscribed button. Thanks, see you at our next story.